Eddie Goldman and the Kristal Hart show at the same time. That's impressive. Okay.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Getting the best of the best. We're here, of course, at Madison Square Garden with Lou DiBella, never shy. And I got to ask you this, since this has been a topic of discussion. Rather than accusing this fighter or that fighter of using or not using performance-enhancing drugs, do you think it's time, as Floyd Mayweather Jr. and others have said, Dr. Margaret Goodman, myself, and Melissa Harrison, to do Olympic-style, state-of-the-art testing and not the Mickey Mouse testing that the athletic commissions do?
You know, I don't know whether it would be cost prohibitive to do that kind of testing across the board, but there should certainly be that type of testing in the major events. And I think that the use of PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs, rampantly across the board, from sport to sport to sport, from amateur athletics to Major League Baseball to football to wrestling to boxing, suggests that there's a problem. I also think, and I want to address this because I guess there have been some quotes in the Philippines where I feel like I've been misquoted, because I have never said that Manny Pacquiao is on performance-enhancing drugs. I think it's unfortunate that when any athlete, particularly a guy of the class of a Pacquiao, is performing feats of brilliance that other people aren't, that there's innuendo and there's suggestion. But I think there's also human nature operating. People don't throw punches the way Manny Pacquiao does. People don't have the conditioning of Manny Pacquiao, and people don't have that strength late in fights that Manny Pacquiao has. Now, that may just be a function of his brilliance. And right now there is no proof that he's doing anything, and until there is, honestly, the innuendo with respect to him personally should stop. You know, Paulie's entitled to his opinion, and Paulie's expresses it. He's not shy. You know, I can't censor him or control what he says. And you know, I understand as an athlete why some of his feelings exist. I think we're in a world right now where guys cheat because they think they have to compete on the highest levels. I think that's a problem endemic to sports in general, not to boxing. But I think that innuendo with respect to particular athletes has to end until there's a basis of proof.
But there have been athletes in other sports, notably Marion Jones in track, who's now recently signed with the WNBA. She was a college basketball star. And people like Rafael Palmeiro in baseball, who insisted and swore up and down emphatically and pointed their finger and yelled and screamed and said, I've never used any of these illegal performance-enhancing drugs. I never will. And, of course, they were soon caught cheating. That, of course, doesn't prove anything about a boxer. But they got caught through testing and various procedures, so you could be able to tell who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth, because we know that this stuff is used on a widespread basis.
Look, there's two sides to every story, and there's two opinions that can be legitimate in the same controversial area. I understand Manny Pacquiao's attitude about the drug testing, the Olympic drug testing, to a degree, in the sense that why should I be subject singularly to testing that every other athlete fighting in the United States is not subject to? The flip side of it is, to some degree, I understand Mayweather's point also. We're living in a world where cheating is rampant across sports, all over the place, and you know, I am, you know, along with Pacquiao, we are the two best fighters in the world. And why can't I say that I wanted a condition to this fight that there be Olympic-style testing? So there are points on both sides. I think that some people were taken aback by Manny's refusal to allow that type of testing. But at the same time, you know, there's no other fighter in this country that's been subjected to that type of testing. So his attitude was like, why should I be treated differently? So, you know, I understand both their points. But I think at some point, you know, as we talked about before, take every fighter aside, take individual situations aside. You're not hitting a baseball in boxing. You're not. You know, you don't have pads on and a helmet on, and you're not clashing with another guy. You're using your fist without, you know, any padding, without any headgear, and it's not a baseball being hit. It's a human being's head. So in some ways, you know, to the extent that a fighter might be cheating, I don't view the use of PEDs much differently than I view what Margarito did, which I consider to be a cardinal sin. You know, I mean, you don't load your gloves. I don't think there's anything worse than that. And you know, having cement in your glove isn't that much different than having cement in your fist. And it's why that I believe cheating has to be dealt with, you know, very strictly in our sport. But that being said, innuendo shouldn't be placed on any athlete until there's proof with respect to that particular athlete.
What do you want to see done in a structural sense to ensure that, given in the Olympics, where Amir Khan, of course, was a silver medalist in 2004 in the amateurs, they're subject to testing under the World Anti-Doping Agency's regulations and their own laboratories. It gets easier, it gets weaker on the professional level, where the guys have more money and there's much more at stake than medals.
I would love to see the state athletic commissions, maybe under the auspices of the Association of Boxing Commissioners. I'd love to see them put together a panel, including people like Margaret Goodman, Flip Hamansky, you know, other doctors that are experts, to determine their view, make a recommendation on what kind of testing should exist in our sport. We don't self-police. You know, one point, you know, that Josh Dubin made in his dissertation during this press conference that I agree with is we don't self-regulate.
He's an attorney working with Paulie.
Working with Paulie. You know, that we fail to self-regulate, we fail to protect our own, and I think that we should self-regulate, take a look at this problem and address it. And I think, frankly, we should do that not only for the benefit of the guys that are victimized by cheating, but frankly for the benefit of guys like Manny Pacquiao and others who are accused and who innuendo exists about. If he was tested, you know, as part of a regimen that existed already, and he tested clean, then no one would be making these innuendos, no one would be saying these things, and there wouldn't be casting aspersions over a guy whose career has clearly been one of the greatest in the history of boxing.
So the absence of testing now has led to sort of a field day where when one fighter has a success, particularly with a lot of power, other people saying, well, the reason he won is because he's doing this or doing that, and the absence of serious testing degrades the sport totally.
I couldn't agree with you more, but the absence of serious testing in baseball, and baseball turning a blind eye for a while to the problem, I think they're more focused on it now. I think that created a lot of innuendo, and you look at you know, rumors all over the place. Was this guy on the list? Was that guy on the list? I think the fact that there is any list at all is an issue. There should be uniformity of testing, and it should be dealt with very, very strongly. But like I said, and I'm going to repeat myself again, innuendo is unfair without a backup of fact. And you know, if any bullets are bouncing off of Manny Pacquiao, it's because he's Superman, not because he's taking any drugs.
Do you think the sanctioning bodies can do it, or is there a need for, even if we have a national?
It's not a matter of sanctioning bodies. It's the purview of either federal or state regulation.
And there's no federal regulation. That's the thing.
Well, that's the other. Look, I testified before Congress 3 times in the last 15 years about the lack of uniformity in health and safety standards in boxing in the United States, which is nothing short of savage. You know, it's savage. But we have a problem in that area that has to be eventually addressed. But there's nobody overseeing the sport of boxing. There's nobody looking out for the long-term interests of the sport. There is no commissioner. There's an Ali Act, as has been pointed out, that's often not enforced. And frankly, promoters that abide by the law are often penalized by virtue of doing that when other guys who are unscrupulous are making more money. So, you know, we have our issues, but they have to be addressed, and you know, I do think that performance-enhancing drugs are a serious issue that need to be addressed on a national or state level with uniformity. But I certainly do believe that casting aspersions, doubt, and pointing a finger at a particular fighter until that fighter has been proven to be using something is inappropriate.
Thank you. Good luck. And there are a couple of us in the media that have that.
On May 15th, Paulie Malignaggi is going to beat Amir Khan.
We shall see. Good luck. Thank you.